Hello and welcome to Become the Teapot. I'm Iain.
And so am I.
This is a podcast where we compare films to the comic books that inspired them. I've read a lot of comics.
And I just saw the ad and thought it looked fun.
As January comes to an end, so too must X month. But we've got one more film to cover before Ryanuary becomes Assorted Comic Books and Films-uary.
The film, of course, is Deadpool 2, which features the character Cable.
So it seems only right that we dive into Cable and Deadpool by Fabian Nicieza.
And just before we get started, I just wanted to check. Do you want to build a snowman?
Oh, no, I'm good.
Fair enough.
Okay, Iain, so Deadpool 2. I'm right in saying that Deadpool is a favourite character of yours.
Indeed.
Are your feelings as strong for Deadpool 2 as they are for Deadpool 1?
Yeah, it's still really, really good. I love it. It's still funny. They've gone for bigger, and that doesn't always mean it'll be better.
Yeah.
But I think it works.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you. They've gone bigger, certainly. Probably like double the budget on this one. For me, though... So this is only the second time I've watched Deadpool 2.
Really?
The first being when it was out in the cinema. And my overwhelming memory of that when I watched it was that the film was somewhat disappointing for me.
I can see it.
Yeah. Watching it again, it wasn't as bad as I remember, I don't think. But I certainly don't enjoy it anywhere near as much as I do the first.
Yeah. I think the first does a really good job of being an origin story, but not doing the same sort of traits. It makes fun of itself.
Yeah.
This is a little bit of the sequelitis, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. You know, in the first one, we talked about it last week, it sort of devolves into a generic superhero film in the third act when it has to sort of wrap things up. But up until that point, it's quite anarchic and different in a way. This just feels throughout like it is stock formula superhero movie.
Yeah.
And also, I think, we talked about it last episode again, I understand why someone might find Deadpool annoying. I like the first one, but I understand why someone might not. And I think the intense level of irreverence can be grating, but that film balanced it. For me, the sequel doesn't quite strike the right balance.
Yeah, it can be a little bit all over the place. I think they've tried to put a lot in this.
Yeah.
I will say that the soundtrack as a whole is great. I think it's kind of going along the lines of, you know, Suicide Squad.
Is that the new name for them? Not Suicide Squad?
Yeah. Nope, the Suicide Squad. But yeah, I think that they're trying to use a variety of song choices.
Yeah.
You know, you've got DMX, you've got All Out of Love, you've got Thunderstruck, and a couple of my favourites is the Bond-style theme song by Celine Dion.
I did like that.
And the mass murdering montage set to Dolly's 9 to 5.
Yeah, I mean, that was a slight continuation on the first, because there was quite a variety of songs, but it goes to show that it's probably that same thing about upping the budget. You know, they've got the rights to some more songs, but there was definitely a variety of pop songs in the first as well. So, yeah, the first one reminds me quite a lot of Kick-Ass in a way, which is another film we both enjoyed.
Yeah.
And that does it as well, doesn't it? Has that variety of pop songs and irreverence. And I like you say, that intro with the Celine Dion, probably a better James Bond song than the last James Bond song.
Well, yeah. I will say that I think this one's more brutal, as in the fight scenes and the killing and all of this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's that montage that I was talking about. He kills a lot of people in very horrible, horrible ways, but yet it's still funny.
You say it's funny. I that may be my problem with this film, is that I wasn't laughing enough during it. There's a lot of jokes, but I didn't find it that funny. And after a while, that when, you know, someone keeps popping out and first of all, someone needs to tell the writers that just a reference is not a joke. It's the same thing as Family Guy. Just mentioning something that exists does not constitute a comedy. There's a lot of that, and it comes a little bit grating. It's just like, okay, can you formulate a joke? There's some funny stuff in there when they actually play on the X-Men references, but have some sort of humour there rather than just mentioning them and moving on. I'm now struggling to think of any example whatsoever, but there's some funny stuff in there. But yeah, for me, it just wasn't funny. I mean, first of all, like you say, it's a bit of a lazy sequelitis. It's The working title for this film for a long, long time, up until they announced Deadpool 2 as the name of it, is a lazy name, by the way, was Untitled Deadpool Sequel. And I think that would have been a far funnier name for this film. I think they should have kept that. And then I got to say, the plot, we talked about fridging in our third episode.
I was going to bring this up, actually.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's her death, as in Vanessa's death. I'm pretty sure that's an example of putting women in the freezer. In the fridge.
The refrigerator. Yeah, no, it's a textbook definition. In fact, the film manages to not only do it for Vanessa, but they also managed to do it for Cable's wife and child. Oh, yeah. So the sole motivation for all of the men characters in this film is because of their dead wives. And the sole motivation for the only woman character in this film, really, Domino, is that she doesn't really know why she's there and she's just going along with things.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it even calls it out as fridging in the film. It does in the opening credits, I know that. I don't know if they necessarily call it fridging. And also, there's several times in the film where he says that's just lazy writing.
Yeah.
But calling out the fact that your writing is lazy does not make it any less lazy. Just throwing in a joke about it, why don't you just write a better script then? I think that this is the thing it's the Fox thing, isn't it? Which we've seen several times before. We've covered it on this podcast. It's a Fox rush job. So they accidentally have a hit. It catches them all by surprise. They go, oh, that made more money than we thought. And then they churn out a sequel within 2 years.
Yeah.
We saw it with Days of Future Past, and then they made X-Men Apocalypse. I think that was 2 years apart. Fantastic Four, again, churned out within 2 years.
Yep.
And in fairness, that Fox aren't the only studio who are guilty of that as well. But, we saw it with Iron Man and Iron Man 2.
And also with John Wick.
Yeah.
Because the first one was just like a hit, and then they're like, oh, okay, well, quick, let's just churn out 2 more.
Exactly.
And the fourth one's coming.
The fourth one's coming. The third one is a complete waste of time. It starts and finishes at exactly the same point. It's 2 hours of him running around and the plot doesn't change. And it just becomes more tiresome the more Superman-y he is. Anyway, that's talking about John Wick. I don't think this film is as bad as, say, Fantastic Four 2 or X-Men Apocalypse or anything like that. But it does feel like that sort of lazy sequel. Oh, crap. We haven't written anything. We've got to write a script, make a film, all within the space of 2 years to capitalise on this success.
Yeah.
And that rarely turns out well.
I did mention in the last episode about the way it was marketed.
Yeah.
So the first one was all about a love story, and it was coming out on Valentine's Day. This one, I've not gone back to watch the adverts, but from what I can think of, they advertised it as like Task Force X.
That's Suicide Squad.
You did the same thing last time. They make it like an X-Force film.
Yeah.
I think that was in the trailers a lot.
It was, it's really prevalent.
And then they do the whole switcheroo going, not really. But yeah, half those people I didn't even know who they were.
That's fair. I mean, they're not particularly famous. There's a lot of 90s characters in there because obviously they stem from X-Force. But they're of a similar ilk to Cable and Deadpool, in terms of creators and eras. Apart from Vanisher, who's in like X-Men number 2 or 3 or something. He's a really early X-Men villain.
Is he?
I mean, none of these characters really bear any resemblance to their comic book counterpart. Actually, I suppose Vanisher's the main one, but because
you can't see him.
Well, in the comic books, he's a teleporter. So he vanishes from the scene of a crime by teleporting.
Oh, okay. So he's not just invisible.
Yeah, because people who are invisible don't vanish because they're always invisible.
Also, I don't understand how people who are invisible can see, because that's not how the eyes work.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to start nitpicking all of the powers that these characters have, we're going to have troubles. But yeah, I mean, I imagine these characters don't have many fans, but I mean, Shatterstar maybe a few more. Because he's been about in X Factor and a bit more used than some of the others. But things like Jesse Bedlam, and I just feel sorry for their fans. I feel sorry for like the idea that if there are big Bedlam fans out there, they go, great, I get to see him on the big screen. The only thing you see is he joins a team that does a couple of one-liners, then gets hit by a bus, and you're like, oh, that was my favourite ever character. I have all of his run. Like for me, if they ever made an Iron Fist show and it was shit, I'd be really disappointed because I'm a huge Iron Fist fan.
I know you are.
Yeah. So, like, just can you imagine?
Can't, actually.
No.
Just talking about X-Force.
Yeah.
Not Task Force X.
Not Task Force X.
I do like that Deadpool says to Domino that her power of luck is not a power. And he bets the guy who thought of that also can't draw feet.
Yeah.
I know it's those things like a reference isn't always a joke, but I did laugh at that one.
Yeah, I mean, that one is a bit better. It isn't just saying it, because he says about him being a crack smoking something or other, glass pipe smoking guy who can't draw feet. Yeah, so really slates him, which, good. So, but yeah, and also it was created by much the same creative team. Don't know if that was Fabian Nicieza as well, created Domino, but certainly Rob Liefeld did, yeah. But not the first luck-based power. Obviously, you got Black Cat as well from Spider-Man. Yeah. There's luck-based powers as well, good and bad.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, since it's the sequel, and then they've introduced Cable,
yes,
along with other stuff, let's talk about him.
Yeah, we probably should.
Do you think Josh Brolin is the right choice? Does it work for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not so fussed about the fact that he's not quite as big as comic book Cable, because no human being is, really. No one's really 6'5" and as wide as they are tall. But I think he's a bit grimdark. I think what works really well about the comic, which we'll talk about in a moment, is Cable is sort of the optimist. He's the one trying to change the world in a way. He's trying to make everything better. And that's the juxtaposition between him and Deadpool. It's not just that he's the grumpy one and Deadpool's the funny one. Mm-hmm. It's the fact that Cable is an optimist and Deadpool is a mercenary. Yeah. I think that the clashing against each other of those two characters in the comics works better than the film. I think Josh Brolin for this role is fine in the film, but it's just not as interesting a dynamic as you perhaps get in the comic books. But, you saw this obviously before reading the comics, so what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I was expecting him to be not the same, but similar in the books. In the film, you are right in saying that he is very, very dark. And I don't know if they've made him that dark just so they could make that joke about him being dark. And is he from the DC films?
Yeah.
It's a lot of effort to make one joke. But he's just a bit... His family has been killed and he comes back to kill the boy. And that's about it. And that just makes him really, really dark and over the top almost.
Yeah, because there's no other way you can go with that. As soon as you kill off his wife and child in the first scene, there's no way you can have that character being light and quippy and making jokes. He can only be grimdark and depressed. But then they still make him make jokes, but whatever.
Yeah, there's so many bits that he could have killed... Fire Fist? Is that his name?
Yes, it is.
The little kid. That's a stupid name. But yeah, there was so many bits where he could have killed him, but obviously because it's a film, you can't really kill him in the first act. But yeah, I guess when he does stop him from murdering that person of the school, the dean guy, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then his family don't die. If he does come back for the sequels, I guess you can make him a little bit more lighthearted and a little bit more...
Yeah.
Well, not as dark, really.
And that kind of follows this comic book arc, because obviously he came back in the 90s when comics were sort of scrabbling to keep up with the zeitgeist and were creating all these weird, grimdark characters off the back of the more light-hearted 60s, 70s into the 80s. It was sort of that post-Watchmen thing where the only thing that writers took from Watchmen was, oh, that was dark, let's copy that. So yeah, I mean, it sort of charts his trajectory in the comic books as he came about as sort of a gruff, grumpy guy with a gun, and then he became this sort of more of a complex figure as things went on. So maybe that will happen. But in a 2-hour runtime, that doesn't translate as well, I think.
Yeah. I did like that his future, it's kind of like the Days of Future Past future in a way that it is quite dark, it's quite grim, but you've got those purpley shades. And I think you see sentinels flying around in the background. I don't quite know. But I think they may have tried to be pairing it up with Days of Future Past, maybe to sort out the timeline. I don't know. The X-Men films are all over the place.
They're all over the place. And yeah, it is kind of a vague dystopian future. They've sort of made him a bit like Bishop in a way as a character. They've sort of combined him a little bit with Bishop's future. So yeah, and it's not sort of delved into deep enough for it to really matter. There's a sort of generic, my family are dead, I'm going for a revenge plot for both characters. Yeah. Even though Deadpool seems to forget about his for about a third of the movie and then goes, oh yeah, that thing, I remember.
You know that I do like a good reference, and on his gun, it goes all the way up to 11.
Yep, it does indeed, which is a reference that you
have not seen.
Still haven't seen. We've only been doing this podcast for a year and a half now, don't worry.
I'll watch it eventually. All right, I'll watch it the next time there's a Spinal Tap reference in a film that we cover.
I've got to say, there's a surprising amount, isn't there? We've done 36 episodes, and Spinal Tap has come up about 5 times in that time. I think everyone has a turn it to an 11 joke at some point.
That some people get and some people don't.
Yeah, or what's wrong with being sexy, I think was one of them as well. But anyway, have you got anything else to say about the film before we move on to the comic book?
Well, a character that I was quite surprised that was in it the first time that I saw it was big old Juggernaut.
Oh yeah, we probably should speak about him, yeah.
Which, I mean, I'm not sure if you know this, but it was voiced by Ryan Reynolds.
Yes, I did, yeah.
Yeah.
Modelled on the director, David Leitch. The face was modelled on the director, apparently. The bits you could see.
Well, yeah.
Big old flappy mouth and eyes. But, yeah, I remember seeing an interview about this with Ryan Reynolds, or it may have been the director, I can't remember. Someone had said that Juggernaut was done dirty in The Last Stand, which is true.
Yeah.
And that they wanted to do him right. But, I mean, I suppose he's better here.
Yeah, it's an improvement for sure.
I mean, yeah, it's an improvement, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily done right, because he's basically a side character who ends up with an electrical cable shoved up his arse. I mean, it's not like it's treating the character with great reverence, is it?
No.
The character who, nothing could stop the Juggernaut, and then is regularly stopped over and over again every time he starts moving. Colossus and Juggernaut in the comics have had these big clashes a lot, and it was a big thing to see those two characters fight on the big screen. It's nice to see, but generally speaking, when those two clashed, Colossus loses.
Yeah.
Because Juggernaut is unstoppable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is certainly an improvement over Vinnie Jones with a funny rock on his head.
But yeah, they do make a reference in this. They didn't in X3 that his brother always tries to read his mind and he's in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
They're trying to work that in, I guess, which is quite nice.
Yeah. Except very, very thick, like Brooklyn accent or New York accent compared to the British Charles Xavier of the films. But I suppose they're stepbrothers, so I suppose Charles's parents might have moved to America and remarried, or his mum. I don't know. Don't quite understand how that works. But yeah, I mean, it's better. It's an improvement of sorts. But I still feel that the unstoppable nature of the Juggernaut was not quite there.
Yeah.
He wasn't much of a threat, apart from ripping Deadpool in half whilst Deadpool was making jokes.
Yeah.
He was there to have a big fight scene at the end.
Pretty much. And Colossus again gets his ass kicked like he did in the first one, but then Colossus then wins anyway, so...
Yeah.
I mean, I thought Colossus is supposed to be he's made of steel, or whatever, and yet he's been beaten twice in 2 films.
The first one was an odd one because he was beaten by such a side character. But I mean, Juggernaut regularly beats him in the comics. Of the 2 when they clash, Colossus loses 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Anyway.
Right. But speaking of this comic, then,
yes.
So we were reading Cable and Deadpool because it's a comic book that is named after the 2 main characters of this film. It is written by Fabian Nicieza, who is one of the co-creators of Deadpool with Rob Liefeld. What are your thoughts on this comic book?
Well, I wasn't really sure what to expect, actually. Going into it, I didn't expect it to be such a big scale kind of story. I was thinking it was just going to be a little bit of fun, Cable and Deadpool teaming up and, I don't know, doing crimes or stopping crimes. I don't really know what I expected. But then this comic involves so many cameos, like the film does, but the story actually involves the X-Men and S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Silver Surfer. We mentioned the cameos in the film, but there's a lot more, maybe less, I don't know, in the comic.
Yeah.
Obviously the ones that I've just said, but then the Fixer, the Cat, Six Pack.
Yeah.
There's so many people in this that I wasn't expecting to see. I knew a little bit, well, clearly I've heard of the X-Men, S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Silver Surfer.
You heard of the X-Men, yeah?
I have, yeah.
Quite a niche title, that.
I had heard of Six Pack before, but I didn't know anything of them. Couldn't tell you who they are or who's part of it. And the Cat, actually, first time I've heard of the Cat, but I did like the anime art style that they used for him.
Right, okay.
He's definitely been drawn in a different way than the other characters.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you've read this before?
I have, yes.
Yeah.
I've read this before. And overall, I think I prefer Joe Kelly's Deadpool run that we read last week, but this is good fun. I do like it. Like you say, there's a lot of cameos, a lot of big stuff happening. And I think you've got to do that with a character like Cable. because especially at this era, he was very powerful.
Almost too powerful.
Yeah, well, you notice at the end of these 12 issues that he is depowered considerably following the events of these 12 issues. So when he is revived, spoiler alert, at the end of the 12 issues that we read, comes back with a lot less power than he had previously.
Yeah.
It's certainly, I think that helps balance things. And the power levels, I was a bit confused in the film, actually, about whether he had TK powers or not, if it was all technology-based. But yeah, so I think you've got to up the scales. And things like you say, Six-Pack obviously is strongly tied to Cable. Cable used to be in Six-Pack, the leader of Six-Pack. So, characters like that come up naturally. The X-Men come up naturally because they're ties to Cable. And obviously Scott is his father.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, things like using Silver Surfer and, they came out of nowhere almost, so...
Yeah, I was very impressed by that. When they said about some alien or someone coming down, I couldn't have told you. I couldn't have guessed it would have been the Silver Surfer. Yeah, the first 6 issues, pretty much the Smurf Church wants to make everyone the same.
Yeah.
And it's very Deadpool and Cable heavy.
Yes.
Issue 7 onwards, it feels more like an X-Men comic than it does a Deadpool comic.
Yeah.
Because of all the crossovers and all sorts.
I almost feel like the first 6 issues feel more Deadpool-y as a series. And then the following 6 issues feel more Cable... Actually, no. Following 4 issues are more Cable-y, and then the last 2 issues are very Deadpool-heavy again. So I do feel like the balancing is... especially in those early issues, because what happens is obviously over time the characters genuinely hate each other at the beginning, are shooting each other in the head and blowing each other's heads up, regular occurrences. And then their relationship over the course of just these 12 issues, but also there's 50 issues in total, I think, it sort of morphs in a natural way over the course of the comic, which is a rare thing in comic books, to have that natural progression until the point where Deadpool is having sex fantasies about Cable. But I think it's entirely believable. But yeah, there's certainly the early issues where you've got them apart and you have to create a reason why they are linked. The body sliding accident. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it almost becomes like I would have said Cable issues for the second arc.
Yeah.
But perhaps X-Men is fair.
Yeah, I didn't actually realise how powerful Cable was. I mean, we've said some of it there, but the fact that he can read minds, he's telekinesis?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know.
Telekinetic, yeah.
That one. And he does have the same kind of shield that he has in the film, but I think in the comic he does it by his mind, not by tech.
It's telekinetic, yeah, so he sort of can do lots of things like that. I think the general... Bear with me, it's been a while since I read it. I think the general idea is that Mr. Sinister had manipulated events to try and breed a really strong mutant, like the all-powerful mutant.
Yeah.
So he had manipulated events to get Scott to knock up Madeline Pryor, who was a clone of Jean Grey, to have the baby. And then the idea was that this really powerful baby, but then was infected with this alien organic virus, was sent to the future for medical reasons.
Yep.
And a lot of his power for the rest of his life was being used to keep his techno-organic virus in check.
Right.
So he's this really powerful mutant, but he's got to use a portion of that to keep himself in check. I think this was probably at a period then when he didn't have to do that, and that's why he's super powerful. But by the end of the comic books, with the new alien thing in him, he's back to that sort of level. Yeah. Yeah,
and as you said, he's gone down in power level a bit.
Yeah. But there was a lot of Jesus allegories with him in this.
There's a lot.
heavy saviour complex going on with him. And it's very deliberate. And I like the fact that everyone references it, including Cable. He goes, yeah, I know, I'm doing it on purpose. It doesn't work for my plan if people don't see me as a Jesus figure. Okay, fair enough. He works much better as a Jesus figure than Superman.
Well, yeah.
Zack Snyder.
Cough, cough. Zack Snyder. I was very, very impressed, actually, that he broke the Silver Surfer's surfboard. I didn't think that was possible.
Well, I think this is why they used the Silver Surfer in that role. They needed to have someone who is immediately apparent that they are super powerful.
Yeah.
And therefore, when they put up a struggle and when they fight Cable, who at this point is also very powerful, it's believable that he could beat Cable, but it's also believable that Cable could put up a bit of a fight but will ultimately lose.
Yeah.
Because, you need someone like that. And it's either going to be someone like the Hulk or Silver Surfer, but the Hulk is pure strength, so it had to be someone of that sort of cosmic level at this stage of... Yeah.
Just want to go back to something that you said about Cable himself, the fact that he is Scott's son.
Yes.
So in this, Marvel Girl is Rachel Summers, right?
At this point, yes.
Yeah. So is that also Scott's daughter?
Yes. Alternate future stepdaughter of him and Jean. Yes.
Because they mention about Cable being his sister. She's his sister.
Yeah, they're parallel universe sisters so they've got the same parents, but they're never obviously...
Right.
They're completely different alternate futures. Comics.
Yeah, because is Cyclops with Emma Frost at this point?
At this point, yeah, I believe Jean Grey, I think this would be 2004, which would have been shortly after the Grant Morrison New X-Men run. So, yes, Jean Grey died again at the end of that. And so this is firmly with Scott and Emma Frost, yes.
Yeah, I was intrigued that that's come up in this comic. I know obviously you've got the Cable ties with Scott and everyone like that. But there was like an early reference to it, and then it's actually part of the arc, I guess, in issue, I think it's 10.
Yeah, it's almost like a throwaway thing that you have the X-Men turn up and it's like a cool splash moment. But yeah, they actually build on the fact that is a family connection a lot more as it goes on. Most of the interactions between the X-Men is with Deadpool, not Cable, though. So there's not too much of that.
Yeah, apart from the last kind of fight, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, overall, you enjoyed it?
Yeah, no, really fun. As I said, it's not what I expected, but it was still really good. I mean, I don't really know what I expected. It's a different way of talking about the character or providing us stories about the character, Deadpool, than last episode.
Yeah.
As I said, it's such a big scale story. I am intrigued where it goes because in my book, I've got 1 to 18.
Okay.
So I've got 6 more issues to read, which I will be reading that at some point.
Yeah. And I think there are 50 issues overall. I think I'm right in saying that Cable left the title for the last arc or two. He basically had a big crossover with the X-Men and ended up going to the future with Hope,
right,
who's not his daughter. She's his adopted daughter, I suppose. But anyway, so he sort of leaves the title towards the end, which is the really strange part. It ends almost a little bit abruptly, but the 42 issues that he was in, or whatever it was really enjoyable. So yeah, I'd recommend. Well, we'll do recommendations at the end as usual.
Actually, you just said there Hope. Wasn't Hope his daughter's name in the film?
In the film, yeah. So they made a reference to that. In the comics, she is post-M-Day, which is the decimation of mutants, even though decimation is completely the wrong term. So basically all the mutants lose their powers, and she is the first mutant born, and she is believed to be the key to getting mutants' powers back.
Right.
So to save her life, Cable goes to the future with her to keep her safe and ends up jumping through time a lot, coming back when she's a full-fledged adult. So he sort of adopts her.
Right.
And that's what he left to do. But yeah, so that's a sort of reference to the fact that he raised Hope from a baby up to adulthood, even though he's not her biological father.
There's a lot of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff happening here.
Yeah, as there always is with Cable. I've simplified events, if anything.
Fair enough. Thank you for that.
So, you've already mentioned then that there's quite a lot of references going on here. In many ways, another word for a reference is an Easter egg.
Mm-hmm. Iain's their cunt.
Yes, he is. Right. Iain's their cunt. Iain's their cunt. Iain's their cunt.
I'm not yoking you.
So, what you got for us this week?
So, quite a few cameos and references and Easter eggs in both film and comic. But as I did last time, just pick out a few of my favourites or ones that I find interesting. At the start of the film, when he's talking to one of the Chinese gang members, he says it's Gail calling, which could be a reference to Gail Simone,
yes,
who has written for the character, but also is now doing Domino as well. Not sure if that's come to an end or not.
Not recently, no. She did write Domino a while back. She also wrote, after Joe Kelly's run ended, she wrote that into the Agent X storyline. Agent X obviously showing up in this comic we've read this time.
Yeah.
She also wrote one of my favourite ongoings of all time, Secret Six, with Catman.
Catman.
And she also founded a website called Women in Refrigerators, which gave way to the trope about women in refrigerators and the knowledge of that.
I've not heard about that. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah. No. If you wish to know more about that, please go back to episode 3, The Dark Knight. I think our sound quality was okay by that episode, but
I think yours was.
Apologies if it isn't.
Mine might not have been. Yes, and also in the first film of Deadpool, Wade says there's a bunch of cocaine hidden in the apartment just beside the cure for blindness, which in this film we do see. So I
Yes.
do like a sort of foreshadowing Easter egg, I guess.
More of a callback than foreshadowing, but
Well,
yeah.
in the first one, it was a foreshadow to this one, or this one's a callback to that one. You can choose.
I choose callback.
And the shirt that Deadpool wears in the tiny legs scene
Yes.
is actually the Truffle Shuffle shirt from The Goonies. And that film also starred a young Josh Brolin.
It did indeed, yeah. He was the sort of older bully guy, brother?
I think so. I've not seen it in years. So many years.
I hadn't actually, no. I saw it a couple of years ago, and I think that was the first time I'd ever seen it all the way through.
Oh,
I just never watched it as a child. Never came up.
too
I
scary.
was too busy watching Star Wars.
Actually, talking about Josh Brolin,
Yep.
obviously the Papa, can you hear me? Happens in the film.
Yep.
But did you know that Barbara Streisand,
Streisand.
whatever her name is Josh Brolin's stepmom?
I did not know that. That's interesting. Oh, cool. Okay.
There you go. So I guess that's why it was in there. I don't know.
Stepmom.
Yeah.
Who's she married? So she's married to his dad.
Yeah.
Who's his dad? Oh, James Brolin. Of course it is. Duh. He's an actor as well. Carry on.
And my next one is in the film and in the comic, in fact, Deadpool has an interest in B. Arthur.
Yes.
And in the opening credits, you can see that he's named his swords B and Arthur. They're engraved on the handle on the end.
Nice. Good little reference.
And I don't suppose you happen to see who the news reporter was in the film.
I did, but you can say it.
It'll probably be quicker if you do.
No, go for it. Go for it. It's the same as the comic book.
It is, yes. It is Irene.
Merriweather.
Thank you. Yeah, which she's quite a predominant character, would you say, in the comics?
Yeah, no, she is. She's got strong ties to Cable as a character. Yeah.
Actually, we didn't bring this up, but I do quite like the little sections of the comic that was like her talking to Cable, which just sprinkled
the
through.
interviews.
Yeah, it gave me a bit of a Watchmen vibe.
Yeah, it definitely had that vibe, and it almost gives entirely the context of what Cable is up to comes from those interviews. So if you skip them, you lose a lot of stuff. But yeah, no, they're really good, fun little character interactions.
And lastly, there is, like I said, a bunch of cameos in the film, and ones we didn't talk about earlier on. You've got Matt Damon and Alan Tudyk.
Alan Tudyk, yeah, we talked about him. We couldn't remember his name a few weeks back.
The pirate from Dodgeball.
Yeah, and he's in A Knight's Tale.
Yes, and Firefly and all sorts. Yeah, those two are there when Cable first appears back in the future, or in the present, comes from the future. Time travel. You got Brad Pitt as the Vanisher.
Yep.
And then the X-Men, you said. But in this film, sadly, at the point of filming, Stan Lee had passed away. But it didn't stop a cameo because you can see his face has been graffitied onto a wall just before the big old truck scene.
Yes, yeah, I saw that. That was nice. Nice little touch. And they had also, I think, in the little short film that came out before this, a poster up on the wall, didn't they, of him? I think it was. Something like that.
Actually, he was alive. He filmed a bit.
Did he film the cameo for that?
Yeah, it wasn't a trailer or a teaser. It was like a little random sort of film.
Yeah.
Because I remember Deadpool goes into a phone booth to get changed.
Yes.
To stop a murder or whatever. And then, I can't remember what Stanley says, but Deadpool tells him to shut up or something, or zip it, Stanley, I think he says.
Fair enough.
I can't not talk about Stanley when he pops up in the film.
Yeah, you can't. Speaking of Brad Pitt, though, I heard that Brad Pitt's payment for doing this film was that Ryan Reynolds had to personally buy him a coffee for his little cameo there.
Well, the cameo that Chris Evans makes in Free Guy, he had that for free.
Yeah.
Because he was in the area filming something else, and they literally just asked him if he had like half an hour to do a cameo.
Well, apparently there's also, I've not seen Matrix Revolutions yet, but Resurrections.
The fourth one.
Yeah, that one. Apparently there's a cameo of Tom Hardy in it because he just happened to be filming Venom 2 at the same time.
Oh.
And so in Venom 2, there are some helicopters flying overhead, which they use as police helicopters, but those are actually the helicopters that were filming Matrix Resurrections at the time. And so, apparently there's a weird crossover there.
There we go. So
any others?
No, all done. So
all done.
Ended up not being such an Easter egg hunt as more of an Easter egg conversation. But there you go.
But sometimes That's the real power of Easter, after all. Is that what we remember on Easter? I don't know. I'm not religious. Right. Conclusion. Overall, what did you think of the film and the comic book?
The film, I would say that the first one is better than the second one, but I still enjoyed the second one. I've got it on Blu-ray, and I've got a bunch of different cuts. And there's one, like the super duper extra version, or whatever they call it, which you've got more film, and they've changed a lot of the jokes, and it's a lot darker.
Right.
And it's more violent and that kind of stuff.
To be honest, that would probably make it worse in my eyes. I think there was almost too much film here, yeah.
But I did enjoy it. I wouldn't say it's one of my favourites, but I can't wait for the third one. It has piqued my interest to see where they take it, especially now that he's over with Marvel again.
Yeah, with the MCU. Yeah, I agree. I'm interested to see where it goes. I don't think it's a terrible film. It's certainly not as bad as I remember it being, but it was definitely a disappointment coming straight off the back of Deadpool. I just think when you compare it to not just that film, but other superhero films, it does fall flat at times.
Yeah. And I've gone through a bunch of the Easter eggs, and we've spoken about a bunch of the cameos and stuff, but it's almost like they'll make a joke or a reference or an Easter egg, and then they'll call it out straight after.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is just doing a reference or talking about that reference.
Yeah, rather than actually being a joke.
He's taking out the fun, for me especially, to try and find these little eggs. Yeah. And he's just going, no, look, it's an egg.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, thank you. You ruined it for me. But anyway, the comic.
Yes.
Like I said, really enjoyed it. I will continue to read this run, especially my book.
Good.
I might then even buy the rest of them, because I've got the Ultimate Collection, 1 to 18. But yeah, I'm definitely intrigued to see where these two characters go.
Yeah.
Yourself?
No, definitely. As I said earlier, I think I prefer Joe Kelly's run, but overall this is really good fun and a very worthy successor to that. I think, as I was about to say earlier, if you're interested in Deadpool and you want to read more about him, I would definitely recommend reading this, but I would start with Kelly's run. Read through that all the way up till the end, through Gail Simone's, etc. And then that leads very nicely into Cable and Deadpool. Then you'd probably just want to jump over what comes after that for Deadpool until you get to the more recent Marvel Now stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a really nice continuation of the Joe Kelly stuff. So as a whole run, it's really good, because it means that you've got 80 whatever issues of Joe Kelly and then 50 issues of this as almost like a continuous story.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, you said that this was the second time that you've seen it.
Yes.
I think it was last year, not too sure when it was, but I had a couple of days off work. So I did a back-to-back Deadpool film night with Kate. And also I did buy and drink some aviation gin, which I'm not a huge fan of gin, but that stuff is crisp.
Yeah, we bought a bottle recently. It's nice. Yeah. Not to promote it. No, we're not sponsored, but as we always say, we'd like to be. Okay, cool. And what was Kate's opinion of the film?
She said, it's not as good as the first one, but still bloody good fun.
Yeah, that's fair. Right, so that's it for Deadpool and Cable and Deadpool. And Cable and Deadpool. And Deadpool.
And Cable.
Do you have any other business?
I do indeed. As sadly, this might be the end of X month for us, and I don't think we're going to go back to or do X month 3.
You never know. Never say never.
There's not that many X-Men films left to do.
There's 2 films left to cover that we haven't done. No, there's 3. There's a Wolverine, Dark Phoenix, Apocalypse.
Which I don't see the point of doing Dark Phoenix, 'cause I don't want to watch it again.
And we've already read Dark Phoenix, which kind of takes the shine off a bit. But and yeah, an X-Men Apocalypse, which I suppose we could do at some point. But
did we do First Class?
No, we didn't. Well, there's our trilogy then.
There you go. Oh, well, in that case,
we'll see you next year for X month. Yeah,
this seems pointless. I'll save it. I'll save it for next year. No. So what I'm going to do is this is a game called IMDB, or as I like to call it, Iain's Movie Data Brain.
Okay. Is that Iain as in IAIN or IAN?
It's you, as in you.
Right.
It's pretty much higher or lower. So I'll be naming X-Men films, the majority we've covered, and you have to tell me if their IMDb score is higher or lower than the previous film.
Okay, right. No, that seems fair. I have noticed that my views on films is sometimes out of whack with IMDb's and the general public's, but we'll go for it. We'll see what happens.
Right, so as I said, I'll start off with a film that we won't cover. And if you say that we are going to, I won't. I'm going to start with Dark Phoenix.
Right. Am I meant to say if that's higher than, lower than?
No, so Dark Phoenix is 5.7 on IMDb.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. Probably a bit high.
So The Last Stand, do you think that scored higher or lower than Dark Phoenix?
Oh, that's a hard one. So 5.7, you say?
Yeah, that was Dark Phoenix.
I think The Last Stand scored higher.
Well done. It was 6.7, so not that much higher.
No?
But still higher.
6.7. I'm going to jot that down because I've got to try and remember this. Go on.
Yeah, please do. So 6.7 for The Last Stand.
Mm-hmm.
Next up is X-Men Origins Wolverine. Is that higher or lower than 6.7, The Last Stand?
Gotta be lower. Gotta be lower.
It is, but surprisingly, 6.6.
Wow, okay.
By one.
I mean, I would say that's worse than Dark Phoenix.
This one could be on our schedule, I think it is. I don't know if you've seen it, actually. I have. The New Mutants.
I have seen The New Mutants, yeah.
Seen it?
Yeah.
So, is it higher or lower than 6.6?
Oh, Jesus. I mean, I thought 6.6 for X-Men Origins was generous. So
Yeah, me
that's
too.
really hard. I mean, I think it's a better film than X-Men Origins, but I don't think it's a particularly good film. So I'm gonna go lower, but I think it's higher, but yeah.
Yep, lower. It is 5.3.
That's harsh compared to those others.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bad film,
Yeah.
but it's not that bad.
Pretty bad.
Right. I'm pretty sure you're going to get this one right. So we'll go from 5.3 to the first X-Men. Is that higher or lower?
That's got to be higher.
Yeah, that one's easy.
Yeah.
7.4.
7.4, right.
And then we move on to X2. Is it higher or lower than 7.4? And what I'll do is I'll throw in a curveball for you.
All right.
You can also say same.
Does this mean it's the same? Oh, are you leading me to say same now? Oh, these mind games. I personally think it's better, so I'm going to say higher.
Oh.
I think you've thrown in same because it's the same, but it's a bit of a giveaway, I'll be honest, saying it at that point.
It is same. It's 7.4. I didn't know if you would take the bait.
Well, I should have done. I should have known you weren't clever enough to trick me.
Right, so 7.4 for X2.
Yep.
We go on to last episode's film, Deadpool 1.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Higher or lower than 7.4?
I personally think it's worse, so I'm going to go with that. Lower.
Lower. Actually higher. It's
okay.
8.0.
That's high.
That's one of the highest ones, yeah.
Which is fair.
And then we move on to X-Men Days of Future Past.
Oh, so higher or lower than 8?
Yes.
All right, it's got to be lower than 8, I would have thought. It's a decent film, but...
It is, but surprisingly, 7.9.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's pretty close, though, isn't it? I mean, those are... You've just said probably the 3 best ones in a row. Oh, apart from Logan. Logan's up there. Carry on.
And that brings us on to this week's film, Deadpool 2. Is it higher or lower than 7.9?
Lower.
It is lower.
Yes.
7.7.
Straight in there.
Still very close, though.
It's pretty close. It's higher than X2. That is... Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And then we move on to a film that you've just said, Logan. Is Logan higher or lower than 7.7?
I think Logan might be the highest rated film. So I'm going to go with that. Higher.
You're correct. 8.1.
Oh.
And then last up, not a film, but we have covered it, WandaVision. Where do you think the series of WandaVision lands? So Logan was 8.1.
Yeah. No, well, traditionally on IMDb, television series rate higher overall. This is something I know of. So I'm going to go higher.
Oh, wrong.
Oh.
It's 8.
8.
8.0.
Okay, that's fair.
But you are correct in saying that Logan is the highest rated.
Yeah.
8.1. And the lowest is New Mutants, which is 5.3. Just to put it in a little bit of comparativeness.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have said New Mutants was the weakest, and I wouldn't have said Logan was the strongest, in fairness, but yeah, they're those ends of the spectrum, aren't they? Let's face it.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Nice little quiz, that. Very good.
A bit different to the usual questions, but yeah, just thought I would give it a go.
No, I like it. I can't wait to see what you come up with for next week's episode. But that's it. Ryanuary is over. We hope you enjoyed it. Normal, non-Ryan Reynolds based service will resume in 2 weeks' time. In the meantime, you can get in touch with your thoughts, questions and heckles on Twitter at becometheteapot or email becometheteapot@hotmail.com. plus all the usual grams, books, etc., etc. Next episode, in a jarring change of pace that can only be described as poorly planned, we're going from Deadpool to the 2001 cult comedy Ghost World, based on the independent comic book of the same name by Daniel Clowes. Looking forward to it, Ian?
I guess so. We'll find out. I know nothing about what you've just said.
Until then, thank you for listening to Become the Teapot. Don't forget to subscribe and read more comics. Done. Stop. That's a short one.
You're still here? Next month it's over. Go home. Chicka chicka.